Hey, it's Matt from Code Tech Tutorials talking to you from my car a little about a subject of coding. I know, high fidelity car sounds, all that. Yeah. So I was just thinking about coding style. And I was thinking about this particular question. Is it important? That's a very simple question, I know. And a very broad subject. Is coding style important? And the simple answer is yes. But the long answer is it's complicated and it's also a double-edged sword. And I will explain that if you'll stick with me for a few minutes here. I'll try to be quick in explaining this, and I'm just curious if other people have the same mentality about this or what, so I'm curious to hear comments and see how it goes. So basically what I was thinking about this, and I've worked a couple coding jobs, one of them where style didn't matter at all. It was all about does it work or not, and does it do the right thing, and the other one was more with a team, and it was like, yeah, code style matters a lot. You have to match the standard. Everybody kind of does the same thing. When you check in your code, it should be up to standard syntax and everything. So, yeah, it's important when you're working with a team for a lot of different reasons. Main couple things I would say are readability, and your code kind of should be anonymous if it's for a general project or a company. You shouldn't be able to look at the code and tell, oh, this guy wrote it because I can tell by this style. That way, that doesn't become the point, because oddly enough, coders are all about flexing with style for some reason. It's like, oh, I use 4 spaces. How many spaces do you use? I don't use spaces, I use tabs. I use 2 spaces. Oh, I'm going to use 2 spaces. And then everybody runs our auto format tool and redoes a whole file at every check-in of changing the spacing. And then you just get incorrect info. It's like, oh, it looks like what's his name wrote this. And then you go to him, you're like, hey, when you were writing this, maybe you can help me out. What were you thinking? And that person's like, oh, I didn't write that. And they're like, well, then why does it say you wrote it? It's like, oh, you got to look further back on the Git lens. Look further back. It's like, oh, you just corrected the formatting 3 different times, so it looks like you wrote it at this point. But you didn't. And, that's just one thing. But it's just a big annoyance. So usually what happens is everybody has a standard they adhere to as far as naming schema. Is it schema or scheme? I don't know. Anyway, as far as how you're going to name your variables, private, public, and whatnot. And that's totally up to how your company wants to do it or how you want to do it. But everybody's got to kind of get on that page if they're on one project, and if not, it just becomes chaos, and it's an additional frustration that has nothing to do with the logic of everything, and it's just like, now we're spending time discussing stuff and messing with stuff that has nothing to do with the project, like I explained, messing with. So the basic point is you want to be able to just get down to the engineering and to the logic of what you're working on when you're a programmer. You don't want to have to mess with all that stuff. And when you're working on your own stuff, you'll develop your own style, and that's fine. It's funny, I was streaming on Twitch, and I was just kind of coding away, and some guy pops in and just starts ragging on everything. I don't know, it was pretty funny to me, in retrospect especially. And no, I appreciated the guy, and I thought he seemed pretty cool, but it was just interesting to just have someone jump in, not understand what I'm working on or have anything to do with anything. Not even a follower, not even a subscriber, and like no one I knew, just some random dude popping in, and he just starts ragging on stuff. It's like, oh, this line, I don't prefer that way. That's the old C style. You got to do it this way. Where's your defines at the top? And I was just like, what? I don't know. I answered all this stuff, and but it got me thinking. These were some good questions he was asking. But why is he so darn concerned? Like, what's it matter to him? He's done it. I would understand if maybe he was analyzing me up and saying, is this guy worth following? Is this someone I can learn from? Maybe that's the case. And maybe he decided no, so he didn't follow. And that's fine, that's fine. But I'd like to think maybe he learned something. Because, you get something out of every conversation. Otherwise, what's the point? And sometimes, it's always good. I believe communication's always good. That's kind of why I'm pushing through and doing stuff like this YouTube channel and talking about it more. I'm really interested in it, and I like hearing about it. So that's my whole thing with coding style, whether it's important or not. And I know that was it went a little longer than I thought it would, but basically, you know, like I said, the basic answer is yeah, it's important, but it's not like so important that you should be spending tons of time on it. It's just one of those things that every person. Okay, so I think this is what goes into style. Coding is an art to some people. Yeah, to some people it's a way of getting stuff into the computer, and I guess to everyone it's like that, but there are some people who view it as more of a form of art, and I'm kind of one of those people. I'll admit, maybe that's something that system engineers or whatever don't, I don't know, maybe they do more, but I believe there's an art to about everything, especially when it comes to design, and good logic design. There's a form of art to it. When you look at, like, I don't know, just any really nice construction, you can always feel the appreciation. You're just like, wow, the design of that thing. You can tell it's solid, it holds well. You can see how it's supposed to flow, and you don't have to overthink it to really figure anything out. That's where style is important, and that's how you kind of want it to read. And what reads easy or good to you might not read easy or good to another person. And that's not super important unless you have that agreement. If you have that agreement, it's like, well, you got to get it cleaned up before checking. And it could be important though, based on compilers. That's another sort of a side. Last thing I'll say is, oh geez, compiler versions and compiling on different systems. It's something really critical to consider also when styling, because, well, like the Clang formatting, for example, is a lot different than this standard Microsoft Visual Studio or GNU style. And even then there's some differences. But the main thing is, if it's got to compile on all the compilers that you're supposed to support and still fit the style. So that can matter. Doesn't always, but another thing that should be considered, and I'm sure people do consider it. Alright, well, that's enough of me ranting and raving on this video about that. Hope you guys enjoyed, and let me know your comments below. See you guys in the next video. Happy holidays. Peace out.